Okay, I'm gonna be sitting for this one because I can. I recently posted this on my Facebook, and owners in the launch phase and the growth phase here, they often say to me the same thing. They'll say things like, "I'm slammed. I'm working nonstop. Things are so busy, I can't keep up." But but what they're doing is they're not solving the same problems. It's kind of like 2 different people saying that they're tired. One just ran their first mile and the other just ran a marathon, right? They may be feeling the same words, but it's a completely different reality. So I'm gonna talk about the launch phase right here first. Most contractors in this phase, they accidentally play business instead of actually building one. They plan, they optimize, they sometimes tweak their logos, they'll hire a marketing agency, they'll get door hangers, they'll do everything in under the sun in order to grow and launch their business. And that's when they say things are so busy, right? Because us, especially men, and then of course there's women contractors out there too, but we have this internal need to feel productive. But in this case, it may feel productive, but it's complete avoidance. At this stage, the only thing that actually matters is your sales. And I'm not talking about perfect messaging. I'm not talking about AI, not crazy and automations, because it really just boils down to asking yourself these three questions to decide whether you have a real business or not. The three questions are: can you sell to people that don't already love you? Can you deliver the work profitably? And can you repeat it next week? Because think of this phase like pouring the first slab, for example. If it's crooked, nothing on top of it matters. This is where speed beats perfectionism every single time. And what you'll find is that many owners, they get this analysis by paralysis. They have no idea what moves that they need to make. And if you're hung up on fear of actually making changes, or you're a class A control freak, this is exactly where you're going to stay. So just think about this: sell, serve, get honest feedback, tighten the offer, and repeat. This feedback loop matters far more than perfection. And if you're a builder or remodeler and you're listening to this and you decide to partner with us, the first thing that we focus on is constraint removal. We're not adding more complexity. We're looking to collect the data that will show us and point us in the direction of where a constraint is. And then we work together on blasting right past it. And the first step in doing this is that we have to clarify the offer. We strip the business down to maybe 1 to 3 clear services, which is also identifies one clear customer, one clear problem. We're not looking for long menus. We're not looking for maybes. And this is where you stop being the yes man, saying yes to everybody in your neighborhood. And then we install a simple sales flow. And what this consists of is one intake path, one qualification filter, one close process. No fancy automations yet. We keep this very simple. And then we target the top 20% of your jobs. And we help contractors stop chasing anything that moves and start pricing towards jobs that actually support the business. And like I mentioned before, the last step is that we tighten feedback loops. That means every job produces insight. What sold, what didn't, why did they say yes, or why did they say no? We use reality to refine the offer. All things considered, the win condition in the launch phase is not comfort, it's conviction. In the growth phase, what usually happens here is this is where contractors usually get stuck. You've already proved that demand exists, but now the business is starting to fight back. More leads don't feel good anymore. It starts to feel heavy, and that's where things start to become chaotic. And what contractors usually find in this phase is it starts to expose uncomfortable truths. The first thing they find is that cash becomes the oxygen in their business. Revenue is not safety, right? Timing and margins become the safety. You can say I mean, you could do a million and still feel broke if money goes out faster than it actually comes in. Another dynamic that usually occurs here is founder led sales becomes the ceiling. You essentially put yourself in a trap because if every deal needs you, then growth inevitably turns into a trap. So you're not scaling, you're stretching at this phase. Another thing you start to identify is that systems matter more than that launch phase hustle. It doesn't fix your repetition problems. Duplication ends up doing that. Actually, if every job runs differently, then every problem feels new. And something else that you'll find is that I already mentioned in the launch phase. And you'll also notice that some of the components in the launch phase also is going to continue into the growth phase. They're not separate in any way. They're just identifying different points of constraints within these phases. But as I mentioned before, your customer experience becomes the multiplier. At this level, your referrals and your reputation will outpace any ad. And it does so because a predictable experience will continue to create trust. And then that trust will then shorten your sales cycles. And if you have shorter sales cycles, that then protects your cash flow. And as you'll see here in number three, delegation. Delegation must be impact based. And what I mean by that is if you're delegating the tiny tasks just to promote yourself into a full time babysitter, I mean, good luck. The bottleneck must be moved away from the owner. But one of the biggest problems in this phase is that fake growth becomes the danger here. For example, you may implement more payroll, you may look for bigger space, you kind of adopt this corporate cosplay. None of that fixes broken execution and broken systems. And if you're stuck in the growth phase and you reach out, our role here is to implement structure and protection. The first thing that we would look at is we would start to map the operating reality, right? Like, what does it actually look like right now? We would document how leads, jobs, money, and people actually move through the business, not how we think they should. And I'm going to mention this again, just like I did in the launch phase, because it's incredibly important. We're going to install a sales and qualification system. And the reason that we do that is we need to protect time by filtering the jobs, increasing speed to estimate, and guiding the homeowners toward higher value decisions. And then we would look at building duplication. And what I mean by that is that we standardize what good looks like. So results don't depend on anything externally. Another point that is really important to focus on is, of course, removing the owner as the bottleneck. That means removing them from sales, follow up, job tracking, and accountability. And we move that into a system so the owner can lead instead of chasing. Now, if you're an owner and you're listening to this and you're like, well, sales is my neck, great. That's where you can put your most focus in, and we can systematize that to make your life so much more easier. And if you don't, let's say you want to be in the field, then you can hire somebody and they can follow the system, and then you can manage them through that. The overall win condition in the growth phase is not speed, it's stability and momentum. The shift between these phases is simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. In the launch phase, you win by selling and improving fast. Speed beats sophistication and perfectionism. In growth phase, you win by protecting your cash, tightening your systems, and removing yourself as a constraint. Same trade, same effort, two completely different games. Builders and remodelers don't get stuck in these phases because they're bad at the trade. They get stuck because they keep solving the wrong problems for the stage that they're actually in. When the solution matches the phase, the business finally feels lighter instead of heavier. That's not motivation. That's not grit. That's not work ethic. It's alignment. I'll talk to you in the next one.